Welcome to Tuesday, July 22nd, 2025, your Day Weather Podcast brought to you by the Advocates Injury Attorneys. If you've been injured in an accident, don't face it alone. Get an experienced local Wyoming attorney on your side. Free consultations at wyomingadvocates.com or call 307-800-1952. You deserve an advocate. Well, there's a lot of moving parts to the weather here, especially over the next 3 days. We're going to be warm. Today will be similar to yesterday, but there's more moisture around and there'll be some showers and thunderstorms. There were in some locations even some nocturnal thunderstorms last night in a few areas, continuing on here this morning. We're going to see that notch we've been talking about circulate through the area tomorrow and into Thursday. That's going to really up the ante in terms of bringing an increase in shower and thunderstorm activity that could happen day, night, or morning in some areas as we get a subtropical plume and an upper level disturbance upslope all kind of working together for that 2-day period, especially along and east of the divide. Then a dry punch of air comes in Friday through Monday. So this won't eliminate thunderstorms Friday through Monday, but it will restrict them a lot. And you'll see the thunderstorm activity on the edges of the dry air. But for the most part, Friday through Monday, we'll see things settling. Then we see the next monsoonal plume come in climatologically right when it usually does show a peak, and that's right at the end of July into the first couple of days of August. So we'll need to watch that. Then at the end of the video, for those of you that hang on, there's some really interesting happenings going on out in the Northwest Pacific, namely near Japan. And you might be thinking, well, how does that relate to us? Well, it could relate to us a lot down the road, and we'll talk about why that might be. So I've got a little ambiance here. A lot of hummingbird feeders in a lot of people's backyards look like this or sound like that. Some great photos coming on in. Thanks for folks out there working the Grand Canyon fire there. Nice rainbow, and got another rainbow shot. In fact, this is the morning of rainbow shots. There's one from Leadville. Thunderstorm activity, and a lot of it lately in north central Nebraska, and there'll be more of that for a part of northern Nebraska for sure here in the days ahead. And beautiful shot of a rainbow and a cumulonimbus cloud out of Montana. And then summer lenticulars. Yes, they happen. You don't see them a lot. But lenticulars can happen any time of the year as long as the winds are loft and you've got a strong mountain barrier and the winds are somewhat perpendicular to those mountain barriers. And with a trough in the Pacific Northwest, we have lenticular clouds there making for a beautiful shot out of the Pinedale area. So summer lenticulars, when you see them, that just means winds aloft are pretty stout. Usually in the summer they're not, but it doesn't mean it doesn't happen. They do. Just not very frequently in July or August. And there's why. You can see that trough there over northern California and winds aloft becoming stronger there over western Wyoming. So here's the scenario getting laid out for today. We have the little notch. Again, it doesn't look like much, but there it is. It's now beginning to rotate around the high. And for those of you who haven't watched the podcast in a few days, this little wave actually was the one that transited along the Gulf Coast and is circulating around the high now. It has produced a little bit of weather overnight. It doesn't look like much, but on the western edge of that disturbance, we have some showers and thunderstorms that have popped up early this morning along the Texas-New Mexico border. These showers and thunderstorms are from that trough that's back up here, and there's a cold frontal boundary and there's subtropical moisture coming up and interacting with that. So we did have some overnight showers and thunderstorms. And the satellite photo is kind of messy this morning. It shows the overnight thunderstorms in the Dakotas, those thunderstorms there in north central Kansas, into Nebraska, then along that Texas-New Mexico border. And then you can see there is some weather associated with that trough in northern California. So there's quite a few moving parts and a good plume of subtropical moisture that's coming on up. The water vapor this morning is showing the notch. So look at the counterclockwise circulation right here. It's subtle, but the air is moving counterclockwise. You can see the clouds right here. So there's that spin, and that spin is coming up right like this. So as it emerges and comes into the region, it really begins to impact the weather tonight. And you'll see that here in a moment. So showers and thunderstorms will be breaking out in the colored areas that you can see there today, surging a little bit more northward. And then as we get into tonight and tomorrow, things start to get a little more active and a little more widespread. There's the severe thunderstorm risk today. Again, it's going to be across the Dakotas, far northern Wyoming and southeastern Montana, closer to that frontal boundary in the northern plains in the Pacific Northwest. As we get into tomorrow, this is noon Mountain Time tomorrow, the notch has worked its way up into this region right here. So the way this timing is working, this wave is going to accelerate and start affecting the region with instability in the development of showers and thunderstorms during the evening and overnight hours, as we'll show you here in a moment. The subtropical moisture by noon tomorrow gets very deep, especially in this concentrated blue and darker green areas. And this is an area right here that there could be a lot of rain, and we'll show you why here in a moment if you're underneath some of those showers and thunderstorms. So by tonight, this is between 6 p.m. and midnight tonight. So there's going to be a cluster of heavy thunderstorms up here in the Dakotas and Minnesota, but a couple of things to point out. This is developing showers and thunderstorms between 6 p.m. tonight and midnight because of that wave coming on up down into New Mexico and Big Bend country here as well. So there's going to be early development of showers and thunderstorms in those highlighted areas during the evening hours. Then overnight, we're going to see this cluster of shower and thunderstorm activity here in western South Dakota and northeastern Wyoming. And then as the heat of the day goes on, they expand. And notice, you see how there's a little bit of a shift towards south? Well, we told you there's a lot going on. Well, there is. There's a bit of a frontal boundary right here, and that little notch is circulating around it. At the same time, there's a concentration of subtropical moisture right here. This is between 6 a.m. and noon tomorrow. So this is morning thunderstorm cluster forming right here during tomorrow morning. And then by tomorrow afternoon, it gets expansive and that frontal boundary sags a little bit more south, and there could be a real concentration of thunderstorms here, as you can see in the brighter colors, across Nebraska into eastern areas of Wyoming, into eastern areas of Colorado, then arching back into the western Dakotas. So that's just the next 24 to 36 hours. And as we look at the severe weather potential tomorrow, there's going to be that, kind of like what we showed you yesterday, along in that east of I-25 corridor where there is some light easterly upslope winds. What we should probably do, and the Storm Prediction Center will probably do this, we should be merging this because, as I mentioned, I think the Pine Ridge of Nebraska, east central Wyoming, southern South Dakota, right here, there could be quite a concentration of rain in the first wave, then quite a concentration of rain in these areas here. So we'll need to keep an eye on those two areas, not only Wednesday, but as we go and overlap into Thursday, there's still along the Front Range some deep moisture, and that will lead to an active day of showers and thunderstorms on Thursday, as well as some cooler temperatures. So from really starting tonight through Thursday evening, it's going to be active along and east of the I-25 corridor out into the adjacent plains. By Friday, here's the dry punch. Much drier air by Friday comes into Arizona, the Great Basin states, and begins to push east. Now, along the edges of the dry air, and east of that and north of that, you're going to get thunderstorms. But by Sunday, so by Friday, by Sunday, you can see that surge. So if you're in the ring or near this ring, on the edges of the dry air, you're still going to get thunderstorms and over the mountain terrain as well. But they won't be nearly as moist and active. Then by Tuesday of next week, we kind of reset things. The high migrates further west, then follow the wind flow with the wind barbs, and you're going to see the subtropical moisture surge back in. So while there won't be a lot of thunderstorm activity Friday through Monday, by Tuesday of next week, it comes back as the high starts to set up here, and then it gets very deep by Wednesday of next week and by Thursday of next week. So that's right at the end of the month. And I can tell you about many heavy rain periods in the Rockies that have happened historically in late July, whether it was the Fort Collins flood, the Big Thompson flood, the August 1st Cheyenne flood. It's just traditionally a time of year when deeper moisture comes in, and that's towards the middle of next week. That'll be the next thing that we'll kind of keep an eye on. Now let's go out in the Pacific. For those of you who have stayed long enough, we're going to talk a little bit about things in the Pacific. We talk a lot about this region right here, as well we should, because this is the most important region of the Pacific, the subtropical Pacific, this huge stretch of warm water along the equator. Well, right now, we are in a neutral status. You see there's patches of blue, there's patches of some brighter red colors. Basically, the subtropics, which was in a strong La Nina state, a pretty decent La Nina state, let's say, for the past year in 2024, is now gone down to a more neutral status. Now, you might be noticing this up here. That's what we're going to talk about here in a second. But let's talk about the most recent prediction. This came out last week. The prediction of sea surface temperature anomalies through March, April, and May of next year is keeping close to the zero anomaly line, just a little bit below or a little bit above. I want you to notice the concentration of all the different models. It's really tight. There isn't a wide deviation. The modeling is usually not this consistent in the Pacific. It really isn't. But what we're showing here, the bottom line is, for the rest of summer, into fall, and the start of winter 2025-26, there's no strong signal of a La Nina. There's no strong signal of an El Nino. It does show that the sea surface temperature anomalies are a little bit colder, but not enough to become a La Nina. And we might see it get a little bit cooler this fall, but not go into a permanent La Nina state. We call it neutral. And if you see these gray bars here, the gray bars represent the probability of a neutral status through fall, through winter, and into spring of 2026. The red bars show the potential for El Nino, the blue bars, La Nina. So you can see there's a little bit of a cooling in the Pacific, then a little bit of a warming, but not enough to be an El Nino. This is important, and we'll talk about this when we release our winter forecast sometime here in early August. When we're in a neutral, we haven't had a neutral winter since right around 2019 or so. So it's been a while, and it does have a big impact on how the winter will go. So let's go back to these bright colors we showed you here out in the Northwest and North Central Pacific. This is quite amazing in terms of what's happened here over the last month with these sea surface temperature anomalies. Remember, these are anomalies. These aren't the actual sea surface temperatures. And remember, it doesn't necessarily mean the warm is hot here or really warm. It's just compared to what we would say over a 30-year period, it's showing an anomaly, that it's a lot warmer than it usually is for the middle of July. So it's just, here's Japan, and we have seen in the last 30 days or so a significant warm-up right here of the sea surface temperature anomalies. Now, this is near a very important current that transports water this direction. The Kuroshio, I'm not pronouncing it correctly, I'm sure, but it's the Kuroshio current. That's the best I'll try here. But this is a well-known current in the Pacific, and this is also a known geothermal active area. There's been a lot of seismic activity here off the Okinawa Trough. And so we have seen a big warm-up. There it is. There's the current I'm talking about. So if you look at what the normal, let's say, I hate to use the word normal, but the usual flow of water across the Pacific, if we were to idealize situations, you can see where the water goes. It goes up to Japan, it goes around, and then it goes into the North Pacific. So if the North Pacific is having this big warm-up, and it's been a huge change. So as of the 21st, as the making of this map, you can see this plume, and that's why it's going from the west to the east, because that current is directing those warmer sea surface temperature anomalies towards the Gulf of Alaska and Aleutians. So look what's happened in 30 days, a little more than 30 days. The anomaly looked like this on June 15th. The anomaly looks like this on the 21st. You might be saying, well, how could those water temperatures warm up so much? Well, I'll tell you this, the sun can't do it alone. Greenhouse gases by far will only nick the first couple of millimeters of the top of the water, so it's not that. The most likely is the geothermal activity there in the Northwest Pacific. And those warmer water temperatures are now being directed eastward. Now, how long will this continue? Nobody really knows. Trying to predict geothermal activity is not for the faint of heart. I don't think anyone can really do it. But what we're seeing here is that the Northwest Pacific Basin is showing this warmer trend this way. So this is interesting. How does it affect us? Well, it really could affect us if it continues as we get into fall and winter. Why? Because it's a known fact, if we go back and look historically, is that when you have above normal water temperatures in the north central Pacific getting into the Gulf of Alaska, okay, what you'll tend to get is a situation to where you're going to get colder, more wet weather. Now this goes back, you might see this in the 70s. A lot of people remarked to me that grew up in the 70s like, well, our winters are nothing like it was when I grew up. Well, there's some truth to that, and a lot of that has to do with the cycles that go through the Pacific. Warm, the PDO, whether it's the Pacific Decadal Oscillation is negative or positive. But even back, there was a paper written in the 70s to try to explain a lot about what happened in the 70s with some really cold winters, especially the early 70s winters, and then the winters after 77 and as you go into 78 and 79. But what we tend to see is that it is known fairly well for folks that watch these things that if you're warmer there, you could end up with a colder winter. I'm not making that proclamation here at the moment, but we've got to watch it. And the reason why we've got to watch it is that the models are picking up on this. The European model, trying to predict the sea surface temperature anomaly, is picking up on what's going on because it initialized in early July. So it saw the warmer waters there. And what it's doing by December is keeping those warmer waters in the North Pacific going. Also, it's a cold signal for North America in the winter when the water temperatures here start to cool off along the coast while it's warmer here and cooler here. So the European model is picking up on it, and so is the Canadian model. And that is something that we will include in our winter forecast next month. So it's interesting. We'll see what happens. We'll continue to monitor it. But I will tell you this, a warm North Pacific usually means a cold winter for somebody in the United States and Canada. But exactly where that's going to be, we're going to have to get a little bit closer and fine-tune things a little bit and watch what continues to go on with sea surface temperature anomalies there. Have yourself a great Tuesday. We'll see you tomorrow.